Men who instinctively take personal responsibility for themselves and their families eventually realize that being atomized, rootless cosmopolitans inhibits their ability to exercise their willpower. Male agency naturally leads into the creation of a patriarchy. Raise your sons to be strong, masculine, and dominant. Raise your daughters to be soft, feminine, and submissive. The bad behavior that we see from women today is simply a rebellion against men's failure to benevolently dominate them. The failure of Western society is a failure to maintain the patriarchy.
Welcome to this 13th episode of Patriarch Hour with Noah Revoy and me, James Fox Higgins. It's great to have you all here watching tonight, and great to be back with you again, Noah. How are you this week?
I'm doing good. It's interesting as we see the quarantine wear on, how it's affecting different people, and you can see the nerves are starting to get a little jangly in the general population. So I think it's an excellent topic tonight, talking about the chaos and order that comes out of the changes that we're having right now in society due to the quarantine, due to facing threats like global threats that we've not really faced in any of our lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been noticing those jangled nerves, as you put it, mostly from outside my own home. It's been interesting. I've been really making sure that as the patriarch of my little family, which is my wife, my sons, and my mother, and I, who all live under the one roof together. And I've been making sure I really keep my finger on the pulse of the family and how we're all going. And actually, it's been a really, really great and connective and very wholesome time for us. But the extended family and our immediate neighbours, and a few more people in the wider circle around us, there's been a little more friction than usual, which has been interesting to experience. But I think the degree to which I've been ahead of the curve in understanding what's coming, and we self-isolated weeks before it was mandatory in Australia to do so. So we have been preparing emotionally, psychologically, and materially for this. And we're keeping ourselves, spiritually healthy through this process and really looking at the silver lining of it. But not everyone's able to do that, and there is a chaos emerging in the world for people who weren't ready for this sudden and drastic change to our lifestyle.
And millions of people are having to face themselves 24/7 for the first time ever. There's, they can still go online and disassociate that way. But the normal things in life that allow people to not be conscious, to not think about themselves, about their relationships, about their marriage, and about their relationships with their kids, for example, a lot of those distractions have disappeared. And it's kind of like being in solitary confinement. What makes people crazy in solitary confinement is they have too much time to think. If you talk to someone who's been in solitary confinement, you have to keep your mind occupied with positive thoughts. And if you tend towards chaotic thinking or towards unhealthy thinking, you're going to suffer tremendously in that. And those that are able to keep themselves disciplined mentally and to keep some sort of an order in how they think, they seem to pass through those experiences relatively unscathed.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right, and I guess the actions we take, the rituals that we practice, and the routines that we create for ourselves are hugely important. And one thing that I've been seeing very big on the manosphere, on Twitter in particular, is there's been awesome encouragement from men and coaches of various modes who are encouraging everyone to take this time to exercise and develop a new home fitness routine, which is essential, but also to, as we were recommending in our episode a few weeks ago, to just maintain normal behavior as you would as if you were going out, even though you're not. So getting dressed properly in the morning, putting on cologne and underarm deodorant, having a shave, and making sure that you're presentable, even if it's just to the mirror or to your family. Hugely important psychologically to present yourself to the world as though you were still active, out working, doing all the normal things that you would do.
And if you think about it, a big part of the reason that we do these things when we go out into the world is to show respect to the people that we're with. We make sure that our hygiene is good, and we make sure that we are dressed appropriately, not only for ourselves, but because we are part of a group and we interact with people, and we want to not impose a cost on them of having to smell us and see us as a total mess. Well, we're doing that for people who are not part of our family, who are kind of strangers to us, really. Doesn't it make sense then that we're going to want to do that for our own family?
And trust me, wives like it when we smell good.
Yeah.
they like it more.
Yeah, traditionally minded women have known this for a long time. I know a lot of ladies have said that, one of their keys to success is they get up, they get dressed like they're going to go out, and then they clean their house. And that might seem kind of irrational. The women who spend their entire day in their sweatpants and their hair in curlers or whatever type thing, those women tend to find the experience of being a stay-at-home mother, of being a stay-at-home wife, much more stressful than the women that take care of themselves. And it's certainly something that helps us to feel better with our situation, and it really helps us to feel that what we're doing is normal life. Right now, normal life is what you make of it, and this can be normal for you during the period of the quarantine. You can normalize what you're doing in order to get through it. You can't remain at a state of high alert, high stress, high tension for a long period of time without having a break. So you need to learn how to act normal.
And that's at the micro level. That's at the individual level, and that's not actually where we're looking so much tonight. We're going to look a bit more big picture, aren't we?
Yeah, for the last 100 years or so, we've given women an equal decision-making role in Western society. Depending on the country you're in, it's been roughly 100 years that women have had the vote. Some a little more, some a little less. And in the last 2 generations, we've actually let women lead. So women make up most of the voters, which means women decide who's in government. They spend most of the money. Depending on the country, it's somewhere between 60 and 80% of GDP is spent by women. They make up most of the government employees, which means they basically run the governments. They collect most of the welfare, so they're the biggest recipient of government aid, which when you receive finances, you get to decide what you do with them. They're favored in legal matters from family courts to criminal court. If you're a woman and you commit a crime, you're going to get less years for the same crime than a man would for doing that crime. And this is pretty much everywhere. It's not often encoded into law, although in some cases it is. But it is the de facto, that's what happens. And we even learned from Sweden recently that the government, in this case, it was the government academia, would create jobs. And if a man won the position, they just disband the position, start it up again a month or 2 later, and run a new contest for it. And they keep doing this until a woman got the position. And because of this, they had many, many women in these basically it's academic welfare positions. So men are even discriminated against in jobs creation.
So it turns out that turns out that James Brown was wrong. Hey, it's actually a woman's world now.
Yep. Yeah. And what's happened is we've given women, and to a large extent children as well, a lot of authority in the world. There was a time when it was understood that children, that for example, dating was not a choice just for the child, just for the young person, that it impacted their parents, it impacted the wider society around them and their community. And so their parents would have a say in who they dated. This doesn't mean, of course, the parents necessarily chose, you must date that person, but the parents' wishes and influence on the child were important. Nowadays, you have, mothers basically pimping their daughters out online, often even underage. And then the moment they hit 18, they've got their OnlyFans page. They're out selling their body. They're basically digital prostitutes. And giving women and children the reins of society has led us to complete chaos. And we're so fragile right now as a society that a single virus, which has only killed really a handful of people compared to, say, AIDS or, cancer or heart disease, and it's crippled the world's economy.
Yeah. I think that it might be worthwhile just at least briefly walking through the logic of making the connection between this current chaos and and the role of women in politics, because it might seem, especially to women, an offensive sort of claim, but I think that there is a straight line from the advent of the female vote to this coronavirus global pandemic, and essentially what that is that women, and you can look at the statistical data on this, women vote for egalitarian, equalitarian, globalist programs, on a much higher proportion than men do, and of course men have been following that female leadership model in recent years towards voting in these globalist leaders in our individual countries and opening up the borders and becoming much more welcoming of refugees, and the whole globo homo paradigm has been really only possible because it plays on the soft, gooey, loving hearts of women who just want everyone to feel good and be okay, and it takes away that balance of power from men who tend to be far more suspicious, far more intolerant, and far more exclusive in the way that we vote, and we tend to think more about our people, our family, our country, less about the whole world. And so, yeah, giving women the vote, as we did, as you said, about a century ago, has created a long line of political programs within individual countries that have then formed this chain around the world, which has created this globalist paradigm, which has then had our borders open, had our chain of supply dependent on the global system, which largely has been centered in China, and has opened us up and made us vulnerable to this coronavirus pandemic. So it's not a direct causation, but it is a causation nonetheless if you look with a wide enough lens.
And if you really think about it, it's not just women; it's feminine thinking. So that can be men that have adopted feminine thinking as well. It's not just actual women. There are a lot of men that think like that. And a great example of this is that the Anglosphere used to have the world's most robust manufacturing. United States, the UK, very robust manufacturing. Not so much Australia because you're physically isolated. But there was this manufacturing came from a very masculine way of thinking, where you get it done. And there was, as women came into power, they started to be more concerned with safety than efficiency. And so we had a lot of laws passed to keep men safe, many of them, which the men themselves, and I know I've worked in construction, I've worked at places where there was heavy manufacturing, and the men mostly hate the safety regulations. They know how to manage their own safety. They don't need to be mothered basically while they're at work. But this has become imposed such a heavy cost that has driven men away from these areas to areas such as technology, where they could take more risks, even if they were more financial rather than physical. And it has caused the jobs to be deported basically, or exported off to China, because China doesn't care about that stuff. And so they're able to do those jobs in China without safety or security concerns. And so, if men were still making decisions, regulations would be much more streamlined, because men understand that you either make it safe for yourself or you die trying. And men are very okay with that. Men are okay with taking risks. They get hurt. Okay, I got hurt. I did it. That was my own mistake. I did something stupid, and I'm going to pay the penalty.
We're more than okay with it. We prefer it. We prefer taking risks. Yeah. It's part of what shapes us as men.
And something that women have a hard time understanding is that men are fairly okay with suffering. We don't do everything masculine men don't do everything we can to avoid suffering. We understand that in order to accomplish important tasks, sometimes suffering is part of the trade-off.
In the words of Captain James T. Kirk, I need my pain. I want my pain. We've got to have it.
Yeah. In fact, men who don't have any suffering will go out and find ways to suffer. I think this is partly why we see such an epidemic of drugs and alcohol abuse in the West, is a lot of men looking for risk, looking for danger. It's possibly why we see all of the young people doing stupid stunts and risking themselves. If we don't have danger for a good reason, if we don't have a good reason to risk, we'll make one up. And men understand this. And men understand this, and they understand this interaction. But when women start to get into positions of management and the focus becomes on safety, we end up becoming crippled. We end up becoming children in the workplace, and we're not efficient. A great example is that a number of doctors have reported that since the coronavirus epidemic started, that in the hospitals, they've been given free rein to do whatever they want. So you got an idea how to save the people? You know, they're going to die anyway. You got a bunch of people are going to die anyway. You got an idea, go try it. You know, if it works, great. Everyone's going to copy you. If it doesn't work,
they were going to die anyway.
You know, they were going to die anyway. Yeah. And the doctors have had to have this, even the women, they've had to have this hard masculine thought of, this is triage. We're not going to save everybody. Let's save who we can. And
get creative, take risks, and see what we
get
win.
Creative, take risks, and you don't have to ask management. Basically, in a lot of cases, management truly comes from HR, and it is workplace mommy.
Yeah.
And workplace mommy makes people feel good, but doesn't get anything accomplished.
Margot's making a great comment in the chats here, saying that, you know, she says, exactly, men have adopted feminine thinking. It's a maternal reaction to lock down the people. That's, you know, the broader situation in this coronavirus pandemic is this lockdown. And I mean, I have mixed feelings about it, and I personally am loving lockdown, but it means my lifestyle hasn't changed very much. It's just I've taken out all the superfluous trips into the world that I don't like anyway. But yeah, the government enforcement of stay at home has this sort of overbearing mother quality about it, doesn't it?
Well, what are we seeing? We're seeing the rise of the Karens. You know, it's all of these busybody ladies going around telling everybody you're breaking the quarantine law. You know, and just it's ridiculous. We've empowered a bunch of women who should be looking after their kids and grandkids and staying out of our face. We've empowered them to go around and call in the state to arrest people because they're surfing at a beach, and which is as isolated as you can be. You know, you're not breathing anybody's face when you're in the middle of a wave.
Yeah, letter of the law kind of shit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and I think it's good because we're going to hit an intensity of toxic mothering that makes people snap back against it.
Yeah.
You know, men and women will get upset with it because it gets to the point even women can't stand it. Yeah. You know, I talk to a lot of women that say they can't stand the attitude of other women about this, you know, being busybodies. There's look, Google scolds bridle. Our ancestors knew how to deal with Karen. This has been a problem throughout history. There's always been a desire for certain women to overmother everyone around them, and we've always had to resist that. And there's different ways that we can do that, but putting the women in charge gave them power to extend that overmothering beyond their local community, beyond their friends and family, and it's become toxic. It's become really terrible, and it's created a kind of chaos that we are so fragile. We as a society are like that overmothered child, you know, the overprotected kid where he goes to get his first job and his mom has to come with him to the interview because he can't go through it on his own. And this is a real thing. This actually happens.
Oh God, poor kid. It's so idical. Yeah. But you know, so what you're saying is that the real threat to society is not the coronavirus, it's the coronavirus.
Yeah, the Karen virus. Yep, absolutely. The coronavirus, people are saying, if this happened when Obama was president, it would have been ignored. Yeah, that's pretty much true. It's not just because Donald Trump is president, although of course, you know, the left will use every opportunity they can to take a crisis and turn it into something beneficial for them. But
Orange Man
it's
bad.
partly that we've gotten even worse in the last 5-10 years. We've decayed even farther as a society. The thing is that we tend to decay. We hit a hard bottom and we bounce up. Decay happens slowly and then all at once. And the fix to the problem has to happen kind of all at once. The reason being that we don't have time to fix the problem slowly. And so we tend to bounce back. It's like an arch of a ball that you throw, and when it hits the ground, it bounces straight back up. So I'm expecting that will be what we're going to face in the future.
So this the coming the coming new order.
Yeah. Well, we were allowing women positions of responsibility. And when I say women, feminine-minded women, there are a very small, maybe 1 or 2% of women that can think like men and keep up with men, and that's a different situation. But when we allow feminine-minded men or women into positions of power and authority, whether it be in government or industry or the church or wherever it happens to be, that's a luxury. We can do that when things are really good. We can afford to be less efficient. We've used up all of our opportunities for that. The luxury is done. And now we no longer have the luxury to allow them to have power. I was listening to a brilliant conversation recently. They were talking about what men needed to do, how men need to stand up, guys like you and I. We need to stand up. We need to start taking lead, and how this needs to filter out to the guys who have potential to take leads, but have been almost shamed out of it recently. And we're talking about, the people dying, how the economy will collapse. And one of the female listeners made a comment. She got, it was an open conversation. So her comment was that she really likes to see how all of the men are stepping up and solving problems, and how she sees a rapid evolution of this. But she's really worried because she wasn't consulted on the issue, And she says she's been in these groups where the men, kind of pat her on the head and say, "Don't worry, dear, we'll take care of this." And she feels that she's left out of the decision-making process. And she says that would be terrible if this new system that we're creating doesn't include a place for women and minorities to give their opinion on everything. So she turned a global pandemic into a situation that's all about her.
Okay, Karen.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I was listening to it afterwards, or I would have probably made a comment like that, which means they probably won't let me in their group to chat with them. But it is amazing. This is part of the mindset, the effeminate mindset. It's not just women. Gamma men think like that too. Yeah. If there's a tragedy, Gamma men will say, "Why me? Why me? How did I end up in this? What? The world is against me," and they'll pull that same shtick. Now, when women do it, we kind of expect that to happen. That's how most women respond to things, and that's natural because they have to think, "Why me?" so that they can think, "Why my children?" And their view is downward towards their children, whereas men tend to have this very horizontal view where we're seeing a very big picture, and we have to do that because we're the outside protection on society as opposed to the gooey center that looks after children. But it's a very different way of thinking, and the kind of people that we've had in charge, both Justin Trudeau may technically be a man, but his thinking is more effeminate than the Queen, for example. She's definitely able to think in a more logical, rational, masculine manner than Justin Trudeau. So it's not just men and women; it's male thinking and female thinking.
Absolutely, and I think what Karen in the example you were describing fails to see, and I guess a lot of women who suffer from modernity have been deprogrammed from seeing, is that women have always in Western civilization had an incredible amount of power and influence in their role as wives and mothers. Women shape the next generation ideally through their home education of their children, through that early childhood influence and the tone that they set for their younglings. And also no one in a healthy monogamous Christian marriage, nobody has more influence or power over a man than his wife. A man lives to please and provide for his wife, and if she's a savvy woman and supportive and loving and nurturing of him and his children, she will be able to influence his views of the world and his decisions in very powerful ways. But it's this sort of Stepford Wives, Mad Men style modern cultural programming that we've received, particularly from Hollywood and from all of the propaganda vehicles that have been used against our people. That women have been led to believe that in the traditional marriage they were prisoners, in the housewife life they were prisoners, and that they had no influence, no power, and that they were almost always abused. And obviously there's always been cases of imprisonment and abuse, but these are the exception to the rule, and these are not normal and healthy, and these are not what we advocate in our new patriarchy that we're trying to build. What we want is a healthy, godly relationship between man and wife, and it's important for women to understand and be re-educated to believe and know that they can have incredible political influence in the world, and it's not actually dependent on them getting a ballot. And it was a huge wake up for my wife in the last general federal election here in Australia, where I wrote down my list of candidates in order that I wanted to vote for them, and I printed it out and I gave it to my wife and my mum, and I said, look, it doesn't make any sense for us to go it alone here. If we vote as a bloc, we have 3 times the voting power. So let's all vote the same way. And trust me, I've done my research. You guys know I'm all over this political stuff. I know what I'm doing. So can we vote together? And we agreed to all vote as a bloc. But in so many households, the wife has her vote because of universal suffrage, and she will go and directly vote against her husband. She'll vote for the opposite candidate to her husband, thus nullifying both of their votes. So the real voting power, the real political power for any of us is in the family. It's not in the individual. So there's something for women to keep in mind.
Absolutely. No, and what is counterintuitive is that the more submissive women are and the better they fill the role of wife and mother, the more power they have. So for men, it's being assertive and going out and making things happen and forming the world to our shape, taming the wilderness, fighting other men who might threaten our family and our community. And that's how we get power in the world. For women, it's the opposite. It's the being submissive and cleaving to their husband and following his lead is how they get power. Men who have wives who are very submissive, who make their lives better, who add a lot of value to their lives, they tend to value the opinions of these women. They tend to take them seriously. And women who do that, the most mature women I've met are the women who have raised a bunch of kids. That seems to have a lot to do with female maturity. And it's partially, there are biological reasons for that, especially if you have sons. You end up with actually some of your son and your husband's DNA floating around in your body. Some of that gets lodged in the brain, and up to 15% of a woman's brain can get converted to be genetically identical to the brain of her sons and husbands. So literally she gets man brain. She gets a brain that thinks more like a man. And that helps to bring her into balance, helps to balance out her emotions. And it's necessary if you're going to deal with sons, otherwise the mother goes crazy seeing all the risks the sons take, and it would be extremely stressful for her. It helps her to have that balance. And it is interesting, the balance there that's necessary, even with the voting between men and women. The influence of the wife on the husband helps the husband to think about things that he might not think about as a man. And so it does end up creating a better society. And I'm not just for not having women voting. I'm for not having most men vote as well. There's, a lot of men that are worse than your average woman when it comes to voting.
Absolutely. Bring back the aristocracy, please.
Yes. There needs to be a qualification that goes beyond you didn't screw up so badly you died before you turned 21, or 18, depending on the country.
Yeah, it's a pretty low bar. Yeah, I vote for noble blood to be the deciding factor. That would be my choice, but luckily I'm not in charge.
Yeah, no, it is. We do have to find a different way to manage that. But what's interesting now is that the coronavirus has changed a lot of people's thinking, and I'm starting to see a lot of people. You can see this in the manosphere, the red pilled Twitter type thing, where there's a lot of guys mentioning that all of the ex-girlfriends are contacting them now.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah, or the
oh,
ex.
my days of thottery are over. I must nail down a man who has a clean supply of toilet paper and
Yeah.
can, hunt for me.
I saw a sad instance of a guy talking about how his wife, who had left him and taken up an apartment in the city to go and rediscover herself. As soon as the lockdown happened, she's at the door, to her husband. I'm back. Can you look after me? And it breaks my heart to hear about these situations because, you know, what's the right thing to do there as a man? Is it to forgive and to bring your wife back home, or is it to slam the door in her face and say, no, bitch, you left when times were good, and now that times are bad, you're crawling back to get the protection and the comfort that I always wanted to provide you. And as soon as things are good again, you're going to leave me for Tyrone. So fuck you. Like,
Yep.
You could understand a man making that choice. But also my loyal heart would also want to take care of my wife if I were in that situation. So it's a real tough one.
Yeah, it is difficult, and you have to see there are some people, men and women, that are basically scorpions. In the old parable of the scorpion, where it ends up stinging I think it's a duck, climbs on the duck's back, goes across the river, halfway across, it stings the duck, and the duck says, "Why'd you do that?" And he said, "I'm a scorpion, I can't help it." There are a lot of people that are like that. You have to know how to judge people correctly, how to understand who they are. There are people that have no integrity. Happens to be in general that women are more prone to flexible morality, and psychologists studies in psychology say that women's morality flexes to the nearest alpha that they see, and if they're Christian, their alpha is God. And so they're going to, the alpha and the omega. So God is there as the alpha. So they will flex their morality to him. And that's good because it's stable and long-term, and you're not going to out alpha God. But for a lot of women, it is their loyalties are flexible. And when times are good, they get out there looking for somebody who fits more what they happen to want at the moment, and times get bad and they're back to Mr. Dependable again. And that is women who are like that, they can't be trusted. The moment things get good, they'll be back off and doing their thing. And if they can get away with it, they'll get away with it. Yeah. And there are men like that too. But generally with men, if you behave like that with other men, you're going to get the crap kicked out of you. And so men tend to work that personality out of them. This is why men who are part of a hierarchy are so attractive to women, is because they know you can't stay in that hierarchy if you're an honorless son of a bitch. You can't stay in that hierarchy. They'll kick you out. So if you're there's got to be something of value to you. It's a good sign for women to look for. And I think it's good to talk about in the second half, what are some of the opportunities that men and women are facing and some of the risks right now. And I think for men, this is a real risk, is that women who you would have known 6 months ago were bad news are going to fake it, that they're good, that they're going to make a great trad wife. I'm guaranteeing you we're going to see an explosion of trad wives. I'm sure they have OnlyFans accounts too. So you can, the OnlyFans trad wives. There's going to be an explosion of trad girls pretending to be,
What?
Pretend.
Only in Clown World.
I guarantee you, I've never been on that site. I only know about it from memes, but I guarantee you, if you went there and type in like trad, you'll have a bunch of girls that are selling the idea of trad mixed with thottery.
I'm pretty sure that's where Lauren Southern ended up, right? She's off the YouTube thing now. She's over there being a trad fan.
I heard she got married and had a kid. Which is good.
I hope so.
Hopefully she doesn't pull a what's her name, Peterson's daughter thing.
Oh, Michaela. Gosh.
Michaela, and I don't like to get into the personal things of people too much, but
the Petersons need help. They're very messed up.
Don't listen to what she says. Don't listen to what she says. Past behavior is the best indicator of future performance. And for men, we're going to have to protect ourselves, because that's the risk we're facing right now. But we're also facing the opportunity that a lot of women who would make a good wife, who weren't thoughts, who were, maybe just kind of closed off, underfathered women who don't know how to interact with men very well and just weren't getting into relationships. They're going to start thinking seriously about what's necessary for them to lock down a husband. And so men who want to get married, excuse me, men who want to get married are going to have a lot of opportunities right now. And we're going to have to learn to filter that really well. And quite honestly, if I was single again, I would not date. If something happened to my wife, be the only way I'd be single. If she'd die in a car accident or something, I would never get divorced. But if I was single again, I would not date on my own. I would absolutely have help. I got you. I've got other men that I know that have good judgment. And if I was interested in a woman, I'd absolutely want to vet her through my male friends. Because I'm 41 years old. Doesn't matter. I'm still a man. You get thinking. You like a woman and you stop thinking with this head and you start thinking with the other one, and you make really stupid decisions.
Yeah,
and that's what we're facing. Yeah, we're facing the opportunity right now for a lot of men that were unmarriageable to suddenly become marriageable again, and a lot of women who shouldn't be married, cleaning up their act temporarily. And the problem is that I do not believe the economy will stay squashed for a long period of time. I believe within 3 years it'll be roaring like it's never been roaring before. We're going to see another boom like we did after the Second World War.
Right.
This
Great.
is not,
and the baby boom will come with it. The next boomers will be born.
Yeah. And this time we have to be more careful how we raise the next boomers. They're gonna, if they're raised in a time of plenty, and I think it will be a time of plenty, but I have a feeling it's going to be a much stricter time. We're not going to. We're close enough to the boomers, burned enough by them, that hopefully we don't repeat the same mistakes they do. Maybe we wait another 4 or 5 generations for that.
Well, the big difference is the flow of information that we're much more aware, thanks to the internet, of the reality and of the way we've been propagandized, and there's much more available sort of antidotal, if that's a word, information against the propaganda program now. So it's going to be harder to send the minds of a generation down a particular track like you could back when you had 3 free-to-air TV channels and everyone ate their dinner around the TV every day back in the youth of the last boomer generation. So it will be different the next time around.
Yeah, we've had the boomers before. Before the fall of Rome, if you listen to how some of the Roman philosophers and Roman politicians were talking about the general public of Rome, it was like the boomers. You could be mistaken for thinking they're describing the boomers. The selfishness, the immorality, the only thinking about today, only thinking about themselves. And that mindset happens when we have an overly permissive society, and we can only do that when we have a society with a lot of excess wealth, with a lot of luxury. And Rome was able to replicate that to a certain extent. And we went overboard with it after the Second World War. It went way over what we would have been able to have done in the past. We were never so wealthy. And I think this time, like you said, part of it is that we're going to have the truth much more easily accessible. The Romans, they couldn't look back to anyone who'd done that before, although I'm sure it's happened in the past as well. The boomers, they didn't look back to see what happened in the past because, who reads old Roman philosophers? Dusty old guys in a university or something. But now we're going to be able to look at this, we'll be able to look at the video evidence of what the boomers did in their entire generational progression and say, no, not my kids.
Yeah.
No, my kids aren't going to be raised like that.
Woodstock is not going to happen again. No way.
Yeah.
Willie Nelson is finally dead. It's over.
Yeah, instead of Woodstock, we're going to have like pilgrimages probably and things like that.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. I know a lot of young people going on pilgrimages here in Europe. I live on one of the famous pilgrimage routes up to Fatima. I know Spanish ones that go up towards Spain. Up towards France and southern France. There's some places that they do these multi-day pilgrimages. And for a lot of them, that's been real deep spiritual experiences, but also allowed them to connect with their community and to get to know other people. And, walking and talking is better than sitting and talking. We have to sit and talk because it's digital. We can't walk outside of the Wi-Fi range. But walking and talking, it opens your mind in a slightly different way. And a lot of the ancient philosophers, they do that. They go for a walk and Jesus Christ did that very often when we're reading the Bible and the apostles are talking to Jesus. They're walking. It'll describe them. They're going between this place and that place, and this is what they said as they were walking.
Well, I think
Opens up
when this crisis and travel bans are all concluded, Noah, and I get to come and visit Mother Europa once more, I'd love to go on a pilgrimage with you, get our families out in the fresh air.
That would make a
together.
really good video. That would make a really good, document it and to share it with people, because I don't think a lot of people understand the community and culture. And I remember when I came to Portugal 15 something years ago, it was all seniors doing it, and now when I go, I see a lot of young people as well.
Well,
A lot of young people are
we're moving
craving
towards. Is I think this, the boomer generation of the last century was taught to be a revolutionary generation. They revolted against the traditional values of the West. And I think the next boomer generation, after this crisis concludes and we see this economic boom and all of the plenty that comes with it, I think there's a really good chance that it's going to be another revolutionary generation, but a revolutionary back to tradition.
Revolt against the modern world.
Exactly, it's going to be the generation of Evola, and the return to Christian traditionalism and other forms of traditionalism, traditional wisdom, and it will be a renaissance, a renaissance generation. I'm looking forward to growing old and watching that happen.
And I think it's interesting with this quarantine, we get to see what are the non-essential businesses. And I think a lot of these non-essential businesses will never open again.
Yeah, all the massage parlors.
Even frankly, most nightclubs, bars, a lot of restaurants exist because people are lazy.
Yeah,
and they don't want to cook at home. There used to be a restaurant. You only ate in a restaurant when you had no choice because you were traveling. It was not a kind of place you really wanted to eat at. Now, I'm not saying that enjoying different gastronomy from around the world isn't fun, but a lot of this we can do at home.
It can't be a lifestyle.
I think we've been very externally focused. The last generation, well, since the boomers were super extroverts. Their parents are very introverted. I think it's the silent generation. They're very introverted.
Yeah.
Then you have the boomers. They are, they walk around, their chest puffed up. We're the best thing to ever happen to humanity, and they go around like that. And it's this extremely extroverted, only thinking about what's outside of you. But you don't get any internal mental development if you don't look inward as well. And I think the younger generations are starting to do a lot of looking inward, and that is the antidote to this. There is advantages to being extroverted. You make friends easily. You get to connect with people. But if you're excessively extroverted, you can't do internal maintenance very well. You start to fall apart inside, and you'll see a lot of boomers really falling apart during this quarantine, because all of a sudden all their distractions are gone, and they're going to have to sit at home and go, actually, I kind of hate myself. I see what the Generation Y and the millennials don't like about me, and because they're sitting at home for a while thinking about things, and they've been able to avoid that since the 50s. One of the big things that was different about the boomers is they had an outside life. They were able to go out. They had places to go to eat. They went from very young age to hang out with their friends in public places. Whereas their parents, used to be dating. You went to the girl's house, you had dinner with her family, and that was dating.
Wholesome. Home cooked meals.
And then you'd spend a few hours. Yeah, and you'd spend a few hours on the evening on the porch, talking with her, and with the grandma occasionally peeking out the window to make sure you guys weren't fooling around. And it was very wholesome. It was very private. It was very personal, and it was very mindful. And the
chaste.
boomers were all about losing their mind. Yeah, very chaste.
Yeah,
and the boomers are all about losing their mind.
Yeah, like that was, such a huge theme in the music of the boomer generation too, wasn't it? Switch off, let your hair out, lose your mind. And with the enjoying other cultures and other cuisines that we were talking about before, the sort of multicultural gastronomy, it's something that I think we all have come to love. But it used to be, and it certainly can be again, that mothers and housewives would get exotic recipes, and they'd pass books around to each other of, hey, have you tried this new recipe out, or have you tried this Japanese cuisine? Here's a book on how to do it. And it was a more tactile and involved exploration of other cultures in the home environment, rather than this crazy spending that we do now in the modern world. We spend so much money on getting other people to make food for us that, frankly, most of the time my wife cooks better than most restaurants that I've been to, and I prefer to eat at home. So
yeah, people will go out and pay a lot of money to eat curry, which is poor people food in India.
Yeah.
And it's basically like rice and some chicken and a few spices, and they could do that at home easily. It's very easy food to cook at home.
Yeah, no one can make a curry
requires
like
a bit more
my nana.
skill, but
my British Raj nana, she made a mean curry, and the standards, the bar's been set very high for me growing up with grandparents who were born and raised in India. So yeah, I don't really do curry.
And for various reasons I won't get into, you'll notice that you don't get so sick when you eat curry you make at home.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
probably because you wash your hands before you make it.
That used to be considered a racist joke. Now that is like government issued life and death. That is the way of the world now. You don't eat out. Restaurants are closed now because you will get sick if you go and eat in a restaurant, and it applies to everyone. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah,
no, I think we're going to, everything that our ancestors knew was logical and right became racist and sexist and, became a phobia. And we're pretty much fed up with that now. We're sick of hearing that. And I think we're going to go back to just speaking the truth and not caring what the consequences are. And
I'm there.
It is, it is. We're going to return to that because we don't have the luxury of, and this is the feminine thinking. The feminine thinking is don't offend anybody. Yeah. Everybody get along, because they have to do that with kids. You have to keep, you can't have your 6-year-old roughhousing with your babies. I know there's got 6-year-old babies. You can't have them roughhousing together. They all have to get along. Yeah. The babies will scratch each other because they don't like someone being so close to them. But then other times they want to be really close to each other. It just depends. But a mother has to say, okay, everybody get along. Don't hurt each other. Take care of each other. You're all equal. That's what has to happen with the kids. And real life isn't like that. And we're going to have to get used to the rough and tumble and bumps and bruises and scrapes and, not everybody being treated with kid gloves anymore. And that means we're going to see an explosion of truth. And truth is what made the West rich. It wasn't colonialism. It was truth. Because of truth, we invented things that were better and faster and more efficient and smarter than the things we had before, because we were willing to face the reality of situations. And we're going to do that again. We're almost certainly going to decouple from the Chinese economy. So we're not going to have access to cheap Chinese labor. We're probably going to, each country is going to decouple from the global economy. Globalism's dead, I think. And that means we're going to produce at home. So there's going to be a high demand for labor-saving devices, as there was in the 1890s to 1920s, more or less, before the First World War, where we were quickly developing these labor-saving devices, the early refrigerators, early washing machines, in order to enable us to have more time to do things. And we're going to go back to that again. I think we're going to see automation replace the need for unskilled labor, which is going to mean that skilled labor becomes more valuable and our quality of life increases.
You know what I think this means for our Aussie viewers? I think Holden might make a comeback. We might have our own car manufacturing again in the future in Australia. That could be huge. I'm looking forward to just being able to buy a well-made, built-to-last desk fan or bicycle for my children that's made in Australia, by Australian design and labourers. That's not going to just be a 2-year investment before it ends up on the junk pile and in the tip. We've become so hyper consumerist in this global economy. It's so incredibly wasteful. And it's, it's wasteful of money, and it's wasteful of material resources, and wasteful of the landfill space that we use, and, terribly damaging to the environment. I can't wait for the global economy to be done and dusted, and for us to decouple from the Chinese manufacturing stranglehold that they have on the world. It's going to be great, and this is part of why I predict the next 50 years is going to be a period likened to the Renaissance. It's not just going to be in the arts, which I'm really pushing for, but it's also going to be in manufacturing and in science and in all of the truth-seeking, reason-based Western mindset that, as you say, created our wealth and built the Western civilization that many other civilizations have copied off and, followed in our footsteps or even stolen from. That's fine, but once we decouple from each other, we'll really separate the wheat from the chaff, and we'll really be able to see. We'll be back to a race of the races. We'll be back to genuine competition between civilizations, and that'll be an exciting time to be part of the West.
We're going to face what I call a recalculation. So we've calculated things to be at certain values because we've had access to cheap labor. That's not just from China. We've had cheap imported labor into our countries as well. There's going to be no place for these people anymore. They will have to go because most of them can't do skilled jobs. If they could, they wouldn't be doing unskilled jobs. They'd move quickly into skilled jobs. And then we'd have to import more third world labor to fill the gap. So there's things they can't do. And as we replace those jobs with automation, they will probably end up repatriating themselves if they have no work. Or we're seeing this already. Apparently, there has been a flood of Mexicans repatriating themselves to Mexico from the United States because all of the restaurants, all of the public services are closed down. They've laid off their gardeners, they've laid off their lower skilled service sector jobs, which were filled mostly by Mexicans and other South Americans. And so many of them are returning voluntarily to the to Mexico. And that's not just ones that are illegals. That includes a lot of citizens as well. It doesn't matter if you're a citizen if you can't get work.
That's right, yeah. And the border's going to be closed for Americans wanting to go into Mexico. So how long until the Mexicans are chanting, build the wall, and we'll even pay for it? What a strange timeline, hey? No one saw it going this way.
Yeah, it's a few weeks back before the coronavirus came. We were a globalized system of open borders. We manufactured nothing. China, sent loads of fentanyl and opioids and other crap into the West. That entire pipeline's been shut down. Nothing's coming from China at the moment, hardly at all. And the only things through the regular post, which is checked quite rigorously compared to mass shipping. Things have changed. The borders are closed. Not only the borders are closed, sometimes the borders between states are closed. The borders, the country I live in, you can't get on the main highways and travel places unless you have a good reason. So we didn't just close national borders. The EU never thought they'd close the borders again. We didn't just close the national border. We closed the borders between cities because there are some cities where they have almost no one with coronavirus and some where they had an outbreak. So they're letting the outbreak burn down so they can concentrate on that city before it ends up burning around in other cities. And it's a smart move.
It's really weird. There's not too far from me where the state border between Queensland and New South Wales is here in Australia. There's a pair of twin cities. On the New South Wales side, it's called Tweed Heads. On the Queensland side, it's called Coolangatta, and it's one town, one shopping district on the beach, and the border just runs through the town, and you go out a little bit further west, and the border actually runs across the Gold Coast airport landing strip. But in this town, in these twin cities, they've put up concrete bollards and they've blocked off the streets that are on the border. It's so strange. I mean, I've only heard about this. I haven't been there, but yeah, it's such a weird thing to hear about a town being divided like the Berlin Wall, over this virus. Very odd.
Yeah, I mean, my ideal living situation would be a small village in the mountains in Portugal here with one way in and one way out. And our version of quarantine would be closing the door to the village. We can still associate in our village any way we like, but nobody gets in and nobody gets out. And if you go out, you don't get back in. And doing something like this, you can quarantine. And this is essentially how we dealt with the plagues in Europe in the past. Is your village would be closed off, but village life had to continue because you needed to eat. And so people would, keep making their food, keep tending to their flocks, but they wouldn't associate outside the village. And that's very good. People live in New York City with no friends. You don't live in a small village without making friends. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Well, either that or frenemies. Depends on how antagonistic your village is. Sometimes it's not all friendly, but that has a lot to do with the quality of the people in the village.
Yeah.
But
it also
you can live in New York and not know anyone.
It also depends on the situation. Sometimes you may have a fractious relationship with somebody, the grumpy old coot down the street. But when push comes to shove and there are external invaders coming in, you guys fight, back to back and side by side. So it's situational a lot of times in those small village environments.
Absolutely. I do remember someone talking about this old village where there's these two guys that they've been fighting since they were teenagers with each other. They were both shepherds. They had sheep flocks. They've been fighting since they were teenagers, and it didn't make sense because they were the only two shepherds in that village. Why they didn't cooperate with each other. It's a lot easier to look after a flock of sheep with a helper because you can be on both ends of the flock. And they would never cooperate with each other. And then one of them, his wife, one of them, the wife died. Nobody was, pretty much paying it. Yeah, everyone came at first and the funeral and stuff. And it was the other guy who was his frenemy, who would come to him and say, give him a pat on the back and say, yeah, it's okay, I understand, and blah, 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 and take care of him.
And even probably though, insult him in the traditional
He'd insult
way,
him the whole time.
Yeah,
he'd insult him and other stuff while he was doing it, but he cared. He just, that was the relationship they had. But if you can live in a big city and not have any relationship. You're better off with someone that you have an antagonistic relationship with in a small village than living in New York and not knowing anybody.
Yeah.
It's a terrible, lonely life to not have, to be amongst people, but alone.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And, there's no escape from New York right now. It's, I really feel for people who are cooped up in Manhattan, especially in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to see what New York will be like in 6 months, they made an excellent documentary about that called Escape from New York. And it was starring the, what's his name? Snake Pilson.
Yeah. Kurt Russell.
You can have a look at it. Yeah, Kurt Russell. Yeah. It's it was made a few years ago. Very prophetic. I'm sure we'll be seeing that in the next few years.
And actually, my book, The Ghost of Emily, and the two books that follow it, I've published the second one, The Ghost of Delacroix, already. The third one, so the first one partly takes place in New York and shows the beginning of the collapse. The collapse of the economy, New York being kind of deserted and starting to become run down, and there is a virus that's swept across Europe and decimated the Caucasian population of Europe and essentially turned it into a caliphate by killing off most white people. But New York has been decimated by shonky Democrat government, and America is in a state of collapse. So you see the beginnings of that in the third book that I'm writing at the moment. 40 years later, the heroes are going to return to New York and find that it's actually become a black ethno-state, in which these young black people have, because all the white people again have either left or been killed by this virus that targeted them, and the citizens of Manhattan have actually been mythologized by their ruling class to believe they was Kangs and that white people are these toxic predatory enemies. So I haven't quite gotten to that part of writing book 3, but I'm going to enjoy delving into my own escape from New York fantasy world for that.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. Where can they get a hold of your book?
So it's on Amazon, it's on Booktopia, it's on Barnes & Noble. It hasn't been banned anywhere yet because none of the powers that be have deciphered any hate speech in it. So it's still available as hardcover paperback. Just Google The Ghost of Emily. Just go to Amazon and search James Fox Higgins, and you'll find both this one and its sequel, which is significantly thicker, The Ghost of Delacroix. And number 3, hopefully I'll get it written this year. I don't have much of an excuse. There's more time on my hands, and I am already about halfway through writing it. So, if you people watching have not read my books yet, then get on it, please. Hurry up.
Yeah, the coronavirus gives us an excellent opportunity to read some books. So it's good. Good.
Yeah, and
Now,
more,
I wanted
think
to
about
finish up with
three prophecies from my first book have come true: the election of Trump, the coronavirus, although it's called Dukala virus in my book, and the crashing of the economy. So now, if Trump gets assassinated in the next year, not that I'm wishing for that in any way, and I wouldn't want that to happen, but if that happens, I will be officially a prophet.
I hope you're wrong.
Me too. I don't want to be a prophet. It's not a fun gig. I just want to be a writer.
Yeah. The problem with prophets is they're only believed after the fact.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the curse of Cassandra. Only believed nobody believes her until afterwards, and then it seems obvious. And then of course you knew that was obvious. But a lot of these things, they will seem obvious in retrospect, but impossible looking ahead. One of the last things I wanted to mention, we talked about some of the risks that men are facing and opportunities. One of the things that men are facing as an opportunity is that there's going to be a lot more women leaving the workforce, because I don't think schools are going to be reopened very soon. And a lot of women are going to leave the workforce to look after their children, and they can't even pool resources. Otherwise, you could have 4 or 5 women get together and each take a turn during the week, and they could still work. What we're going to end up seeing because of that is a rise in demand for jobs that women used to do. A lot of them are non-essential and won't be replaced, but many of them will be replaced, and they'll be looking for men to replace them. And so for a lot of men, they're going to find that there's opportunities for highly skilled jobs. So polish your resume, work on, we're about to head into a bull market for masculinity. So work on your masculinity, get fit, get strong. All of my clients that have focused on becoming the best version of themselves possible have found their income increase dramatically after about 6 months. And this is really common. I mentioned this on Twitter, and some of my clients were saying, some people are saying, the same thing happened to me. Worked on those things. It's going to improve it. Now for women, the opportunity they have is that there's going to be a lot of men out there who were underemployed in the past, and now there's going to be demand for these men, which means, men that were borderline able to look after a stay-at-home mom, if the income increases, they're going to be able to do that. There probably will be a housing market collapse, which means there's going to be a lot of men out there wanting to buy a house, get a wife, and start a family. And so a lot of women who have been looking for that, a lot of women have been wanting men to grow up a little more, younger men, to grow up more so that they could make a good husband. And I think you're going to see men take this opportunity and rise to it. Men need a challenge. This soft times have been terrible for men. Soft times destroy men. They destroy masculinity. They ruin us. Hard times are what we love. We need it. And women, you're gonna see a rise of masculinity that we haven't seen since the Second World War. Men are gonna be coming back with a vengeance. And this is an opportunity to go out and snag one. Go look for one that's developing himself, that's on a good trajectory. And the risk that you're facing right now is that you're gonna be left behind, because there will always be a shortage of good men. And women can change a lot, and they can flex to the situation. Men don't change as much as women do. And so go out there and find that good man. Don't be left behind. And for men and women, if you're needing help to notice the opportunities around you, that's what a coach is for. A coach helps you see opportunities you couldn't have seen on your own, and helps you deal with risks and dangers that you maybe couldn't have dealt with as well on your own. That's the point of having a coach. So definitely put some thought into finding yourself a coach.
And it just so happens that both Noah and myself are coaches, and we're going to leave you at the end of tonight with a bit of information about what we do and how you can reach us. So if any of you viewers are wanting to be ready for this bull market in masculinity that's coming, and wanting to be able to see your own weaknesses through a new lens, through another perspective, to be able to recognize the opportunities, to see the unseen patterns in your own behavior, to understand their root causes, where that's going to help you, or to just do away with worrying about that and get into the action to make the changes that are necessary for your future. Now is the time of opportunity. We're in the crisis, and with every crisis comes a great opportunity. As Noah's saying, single women, get ready to snag yourself a great man, and men, get ready to have far more options available to you than you ever thought. I put one of our viewers in timeout just earlier in the chats because they were peddling despair. They were sort of saying, oh, you guys think you're going to grow old, responding to one of my comments. And what this demonstrates is that these easy times that we have come from growing up have led us to a point where the moment things get a little bit difficult, and trust me, things are nowhere near as difficult right now as they were for our grandparents or our great-grandparents or any generation before that. This is still cushy compared to what people have faced in the past. And if you are going to start not only wallowing in your own despair and your own pessimism about the future and then trying to peddle it to other people, you're not welcome here. And the future is not yours, but it's the men who seize this opportunity and who recognize that now is our time. This is the time that God put us here for. This is the challenge we were born to face. And this is the hard times that are going to shape us into being great men of the West to bring about this next renaissance. Man, carpe diem. Let's seize the day together, man.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to see how the rise of men will affect my sons. I have 3 sons. You have 2 sons. And, it's going to be a great world for them. And it's up to us and it's up to the generation now to reestablish that opportunity for a real renaissance of humanity, especially a renaissance in the West.
Well, we're ready and we're here to help. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been our 13th episode of Patriarch Hour. Noah and I are just loving getting to do this with you each week, and we will see you again next week. Noah, take care. Have an excellent week with your family.
Thank you. Say hi to your family for me.
I will. All right. God bless everyone, and stay safe. We'll see you next week.
What's the one thing that successful CEOs and sports athletes have in common? They all have coaches and mentors. A good coach can help you to notice opportunities that you may have otherwise missed and to successfully negotiate dangers and risks. With my help, my clients have been able to find true love, to get married, to have children, to create successful companies, to overcome debilitating anxiety and depression, to get raises at work, and to create a life that they feel happy with. We're about to hit a time of unprecedented opportunity. And those who have got their minds, their hearts, and their lives organized right now are going to be the ones that are able to take advantage of that opportunity. It can be you. Contact me now so that I can help you to become the best that you can be.
Noah is absolutely right that it takes coaches and mentors to help us be the best that we can be. So definitely get in touch with Noah if you like his style, if you've been enjoying his contributions at Patriarch Hour and you think he's the coach for you, definitely get in touch with him. I take a different approach to Noah, but I also work as a coach, and I love to work with men and women and families to help you to see the things that you can't see. I've got a high IQ, I've got a lot of life experience, I've worked with people from all different walks of life, and I myself am 10 years happily married with 2 beautiful children and a really blessed life that I have deliberately crafted for myself by making good decisions, and that I continue to sustain by making good decisions and by trying to always know myself and see the unseen. Now, I've picked up a lot of tools along my path of learning about myself that I can share with you. And also I have a very strong perception of the problems that people face, and I see patterns that other people don't see. This is one of the gifts that God has given me, to recognize the patterns of behavior that you might not be able to see. It takes a third person perspective sometimes to recognize why we are in the situations that we are in. And I've worked with many people over the years and helped many people to break out of situations that were difficult for them, to find God if that's something that you're looking for, or to at least find a way to change those patterns of behavior that you feel trapped in. I'd love to work with you, so please get in touch with me if you'd like to work with me, and I'd love to take you on as a client. Thanks for watching Patriarch Hour. Noah and I will see you next time.